Sylvester Stallone did something very few actors ever pull off. He did not just play a famous character. He welded himself to one. He wrote Rocky Balboa. Then he stepped in front of the camera and became Rocky Balboa. That is where the trouble starts, because once the public falls in love with a character that deeply, the line between role and real person begins to blur. Rocky was sold as a working-class Italian-American boxer. He had the face, the grit, the neighborhood feel, the hunger, and the nickname that sealed it all, the Italian Stallion. Audiences heard that phrase and did what audiences always do when a story fits too well. They carried it off the screen and pinned it to Stallone himself. Fans came away feeling they knew something solid about his ancestry. They thought they had the whole picture. They did not. The man many people still picture as pure Italian was never just that. The image looked complete. The real background was not. The nickname came from branding, storytelling, and one brilliantly sticky connection. His own surname, Stallone, means stallion in Italian. Stallone's own last name matched the animal in the nickname. It did not feel like marketing. It felt like destiny. And when something feels like destiny, people stop checking the details. But the details matter here, because the details overturn the whole neat story. Genealogical work shows Stallone is only about half Italian. His mother's side brought in French, Breton, and Eastern European roots, including possible Jewish, Ukrainian roots. His public identity got narrowed into one lane, even though his family background was more mixed, more layered, and much more American in the broad, old-fashioned sense of the word. A European blend turned into a single-star persona. His story did not begin under movie lights. It began in southern Italy, in a town called Gioia del Colle. His grandfather, Sylvester Stallone, was born there in 1883. He trained and worked there as a barber. That was honest work. It was skilled work. It could bring modest, steady income to a working-class family. But modest and steady are not the same as open and rising. In the early 20th century, many men in southern Italy faced that wall. They knew a trade. They worked hard. Yet the room for moving up stayed small. Staying meant small chances. Leaving meant risk, distance, and no promise at all. Sylvester made that choice first. He left in 1923. Millions of Italians left for the United States between the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Southern Italy sent out wave after wave of people who were chasing the chance to live better than they could where they were. Sylvester joined that stream. You can feel the weight of that choice even with the facts kept plain. He had a trade. He had a place. He had roots in Gioia del Colle. Then he chose the unknown instead. That is the first hinge in the Stallone family story. If he stays, the family line stays fixed in the same place. If he goes, everything changes. Then the story repeated itself in a new form through his son. Frank Stallone Sr. was born in 1919 in Gioia del Colle, in the poor agricultural region of Puglia. His family had moved there from nearby Palo del Colle. They were a family adjusting, relocating, trying to find the better place nearby before looking for one much farther away. As a teenager, Frank worked as a sheep herder. He rode horses through the countryside and worked in a hard rural world. There is no glamour in that picture. There is labor. There is weather. For a teenager, that kind of life can build stamina, but it can also make the limits of that life very clear. In the early 1930s, at around age 13, he emigrated to the United States to join his parents. A boy left for a fresh start in America at an age when many children are still fully inside childhood. Decades later, Sylvester Stallone stood in a town square in southern Italy holding a small object that carried far more weight than its size. In 2023, he walked back into the place that made his name feel real. He was returning to the exact place where his father was born, where his grandfather worked, and where one family choice changed everything that came after. He was not holding a movie award. He was not holding a script. He held the original key to his grandfather's barbershop in Gioia del Colle. When Stallone held that key up in Piazza Plebiscito during the open-air ceremony in September 2023, he turned a family detail into something much bigger. He used the visit to publicly reconcile with and celebrate that Southern Italian immigrant background. By granting honorary citizenship to Sylvester Stallone and his brother Frank, the town made something official that family history had already made real. He said that his grandfather's courage to leave Gioia del Colle a century earlier made his own career and family possible. He linked movie fame to emigration. He linked personal success to sacrifice made by someone else long before him. That Southern Italian line gives Sylvester Stallone about half of his ancestry. It explains why he became such a strong symbol of Italian-American identity. Half is the spine of the public image people know, but when you reach his mother's side, that neat picture starts to crack. Stallone is also 1/4 Breton French. This direct line runs straight through his maternal grandmother, Jeanne Victoria Adrienne Anne Cleric. She was born in Brest, in Brittany, on July 29, 1901. Her parents, Louis Victor Cleric and Marie-Pauline Rodrigue, were French of Breton ancestry. Brest is not a random dot on a map. It sits in Brittany, and the Bretons are a Celtic people. Their culture and language survived for centuries under one French state after another. This means one of the most famous tough guy faces in modern film carries a direct family line back to one of Europe's oldest Celtic regions. Jeanne Cleric carried that ancient endurance. Then her own life turned that ancestry into motion. She met John Paul Labofish, an American lawyer from Pennsylvania. They met when he was stationed in Brest during or just after World War I. Wars shift bodies. Stations change futures. A meeting that would never have happened in ordinary life suddenly becomes the moment everything turns. She married him. Their daughter, Jacqueline Frances Labiofish, was born in Washington, D.C. She later became known as Jackie Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's mother. The family line moved across the Atlantic, and with that move, Brittany entered an American family. Stallone carries Brittany into rooms where no one is thinking about Brest. The strongest public image in the room is not the only strong thing in the story. The Breton line is strong too. It just does not shout. If the French Breton Quarter is a surprise, the final branch of the family tree is a shock. Genealogists traced Jackie Stallone's father, John Paul Labofish, back to parents whose names were recorded in more than one form. The records point to Charles and Rosa, and the surname shifts from Labofis to Labofitz and Liebofish. A family crossing borders often crossed spellings too. A clerk wrote what he heard. A port official guessed. Over time, the old form could blur into something easier for America to say. The shifting forms are the marks left by movement. They show a family in transition, trying to survive the journey from one world into another. Those records do not point to a vague European past. They point to Odessa in the Russian Empire. They point to Jewish emigration around 1888. Charles was born in Odessa in 1861, with parents named Ayel Labofitz and Dora Breyer. Genealogists note that they fit patterns common in Eastern European Jewish communities. Odessa sat inside the Pale of Settlement. The Pale of Settlement was the region where many Jews in the Russian Empire were forced to live. It was a system of limits on where families could settle, limits on safety, and limits on hope. Around 1888, Charles and Rosa Lamlek left. To leave Odessa in the late 19th century meant there was already enough strain behind you to make departure worth the risk. Historical accounts and Jewish genealogy sources place that move inside a larger wave of Jewish families fleeing hardship and danger. Families like this often sailed to the United States through ports such as Hamburg or Bremen. The journey was a chain of leaving, a passage, a waiting point, and a remaking. But the paperwork from that era flattens out complicated lives. The records often place Charles and Rosa in Germany or Russia. A birthplace listed as Russia does not tell you ethnicity by itself. Even the language line German does not end the search. That could describe ethnic Germans from Black Sea regions of the Russian Empire, including areas tied to Bessarabia or Odessa. Many families in those zones were German or German-speaking and not Jewish, so the documents create a deep, meaningful fog. On one side, census and naturalization-style records suggest a German-speaking family from the Russian Empire. On the other, biographical and genealogical pieces keep drawing attention back to Ashkenazi, Jewish roots tied to Odessa. They point to surname patterns. They point to the timing of emigration in the late 1800s or early 1900s. Neither side can fully crush the other. Jackie Stallone added another layer, and it may be the most frustrating one of all. She only vaguely acknowledged Jewish background on her mother's side. Her wording leaves room for full Jewish ancestry, a part Jewish ancestry, a mixed line through marriage, or a family born Jewish that later lived as Christians in the United States. Families often remember the feeling of identity longer than the exact line of it. The family gradually integrated into American life and often downplayed or obscured that background publicly. One generation survives by changing what it says out loud. The next generation grows up with the edited version. That means Stallone is at least 1/4 Eastern European Jewish by descent on that side. The man the world sees as pure Italian actually comes from a more layered family history than many people ever knew. Sylvester Stallone inherited this crowded, messy map. He comes from 4 grandparents, and each one pulls a different thread across Europe. Southern Italian Catholic roots, Breton French Catholic roots, Ashkenazi Jewish-rooted ancestry from Odessa. Different geographies, different pressures, different cultural worlds. Then he did something brilliant. He did not just let this mixed background define him passively. He acted as an editor and a builder. He knew that fame hates clutter. Fame reduces. It trims. America loves a clear origin story. Stallone recognized that mixed roots are often less marketable than a single strong identity, especially in an entertainment world that loves shorthand. He took the huge, messy human truth of immigrant survival and packed it into a single boxer. He chose the name Rocky Balboa. He chose the Italian-American frame because it worked as drama. It had edge, it had feeling, it had class struggle, neighborhood pride, and this sense that a man could fight his way into respect. He leaned hard into his father's Puglia heritage. He let his Breton grandmother and his Odessa great-grandparents sit quietly in the background. The Italian side was the loudest piece because it matched the role that made him. Put all of that together in the 1970s and 1980s, an era that loved big masculine images, and the result was explosive. Italian Stallion gave audiences a complete package in 3 seconds. Italian, tough, male, fast, memorable. It gave fans an instant emotional handle. Say something enough times. Put it on posters, put it in reviews, let fans repeat it back. Soon, a nickname starts acting like a fact. People stopped saying that was Rocky's image and started saying that is who Stallone is. The leap from screen persona to bloodline happened almost without anyone noticing. The culture was ready to reward that kind of big masculine branding. The public dropped the complex truth and held on to the boldest part of the story. The character almost swallowed the man who made him. Stallone's career gave that spirit a face and a body the world recognized. But Rocky is just the distilled, public version of the story. Stallone is the private, complicated reality. America did not grow from one kind of immigrant tale. It grew from stacks of them. Southern Italians came, French families came, Jewish families came, German-speaking families came. Stallone's own bloodline is a miniature version of the Atlantic world. He carries the old coast of Brittany and the mixed households of Odessa, right alongside the barbershop in Gioia del Colle. He is the child of several migrations at once. The next time you picture Rocky running, sweating, climbing, and lifting himself into American legend, remember who made him. You are not just looking at a man from one neighborhood, you are looking at a man who took a sprawling, chaotic family history and hammered it into American legend. Rocky wore the simple myth. Sylvester Stallone carried the fuller map.